Hello and welcome to Arise News. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of February. I'm Charles Enyegulu in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. This is Arise News Now. Our main headlines this morning: on the hunt, Malaysian police seek a North Korean official over the killing of Kin Jun Nam. Getting help to the people displaced by Boko Haram. Humanitarian groups in Nigeria tell us about the challenges. And is the American dream over? Pop star Katy Perry takes a political stand in her latest release. Our top story this hour: a senior official at North Korea's embassy in Malaysia is wanted for the killing of Kin Jun Nam. Malaysian police say they are also seeking an airline worker. Mr. Kim, the half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, died last week at Kuala Lumpur airport when he was approached by two women who wiped a toxin on his face. North Korea has denied any involvement in the attack. Humanitarian groups in the town of Dikor in northeast Nigeria are trying to bring help to 57,000 people who've been forced out of their homes by Boko Haram. The terror group's insurgency has devastated the remote region since 2009. Arise News has this special report.
Burns to her face and a broken leg. This woman was injured when the Nigerian army launched an attack against Boko Haram. The damage from the fighting is physical, emotional and life-changing. In Dikwa, in the northeast of the country, 200 to 300 people arrive each day, fleeing poverty and insecurity.
Their condition, both hygienically, nutritionally and health-wise, is very poor. But as they come here, we integrate them. We sort of look for their relatives. After we treat them here, we look for their relatives and make sure that they have food supplies, they have medicines.
Over the last 8 years, Boko Haram fighters have devastated the north of Nigeria and the Lake Chad region. More than 20,000 people have been killed and 2.6 million displaced. And as the army retakes territory, the scale of the crisis has become even clearer. UNICEF warns that 450,000 children are suffering from severe malnutrition.
When I was in the village, sometimes we had food, sometimes not. So I came here to the camp because of the lack of food. Thanks to God, the aid agencies help us and give us food to eat.
An improvement maybe, but sanitation, medicine and food are still in short supply.
They need clothes, they need soap to wash. The water, you can see, is long queue. They have only one source of water in this camp.
On top of that, economic activity has been almost wiped out. Traders are monitored by the army and often suspected of collaborating with Islamist insurgents. The UN Security Council plans to visit next month to put the humanitarian crisis in northern Nigeria at the top of the global agenda.
Now, an international rights group is warning that US President Donald Trump is endangering the world with policies that demonize people. Amnesty International's annual report highlighted the poisonous politics of demonization and how it is making the world more fragmented, more unequal, and more unsafe. The report points towards President Trump, the Philippine and Turkish presidents Rodrigo Duterte and Recep Tayyip Erdogan, as well as Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, as leaders using us versus them rhetoric.
2016 was pretty awful as a year for human rights. It was marked by a poisonous and divisive manipulation of identity politics by politicians who made cynical use of the us versus them narrative, the counter-human rights narrative of blame, of hate, of fear, in order to press the right buttons to win votes from excluded, disenchanted voters.
Now to Ecuador, where it's been confirmed a second ballot is to be held in the race to decide the country's next president. Leftist government candidate Lenin Moreno just failed to reach the 40% of votes needed to secure a victory. He finished on 39.21%. His rival, ex-banker Guillermo Lasso, reached 28.34%, but his supporters were delighted with the outcome.
Aceptar They can't accept the truth. They can't. But they have to look at the Ecuadorian people face to face and tell them, we respect their will. I accept the ballot.
Now, the French Prime Minister has visited the Forbidden City as part of an official 3-day trip to China. Bernard Cazeneuve was invited to the country by Premier Li Keqiang, and he's also set to meet President Xi Jinping. China hopes the visit will have a positive impact on their relationship with the EU. Still in China, we're strolling down a Shanghai street. You'll see a common sight, women taking selfies on smartphones. But the difference is millions of women in China are digitally beautifying themselves before posting the photo to social media. For Arise News, Matthew Wright has the story.
The selfie, a symbol of the smartphone age. But here in China, a great photo is only the beginning. Hu Dongyuan and her friends want to repackage themselves for the online world. And, you've guessed it, there's an app for that.
It can help you beautify your skin, cover up your flaws, and emphasize your best features.
China has a world-leading 700 million mobile internet users. And every day millions of Chinese women are editing and sharing photos using apps like these.
What you post on social media is just like an advertisement. There is certainly a difference between the advertisement and the actual product. So everyone uses it as a kind of personal advert. And you hope people see a better version of your original appearance.
China's homegrown app companies are flourishing. From shopping to health, many apps target young women, a powerful consumer force.
I think nowadays Chinese women, especially in first-tier cities, are no longer trying to please other people. It's more about pleasing themselves.
One company, valued at $4.6 billion when it listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange last year, claims its apps process half of all pictures posted on Chinese social media.
I think internet and tech companies in China have become very refined in terms of innovation. For example, the Meitu app firm is very professional, so it has created this demand. In foreign countries, Instagram is maybe only an app with filters, but in China, apps have become extremely professional.
But profits remain elusive. Meitu lost $320 million in the first half of 2016. Suggesting there are many more makeovers to go.
Well, time now for a short break, but do stay with us. I'll be right back with all the business news. And do also tune in later this week for an Arise special as our team in Los Angeles brings you all the glitz and glamour from the Oscars.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Then think Zenith, one of the biggest in Nigeria, with assets over $16 billion, listed among the 20 most influential brands in the world, and winner of Best Bank in Corporate Governance. The most customer-focused bank in Nigeria, a success built on 3 foundations, dedicated to people, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
There is nothing as symbolic as a door. It shuts to protect you and opens to give you much more. Everyone wants to succeed, not just count pennies. When life gets tough, I remember a few things. Difficulty and struggles are part of what life brings. Your strength comes from the support around you. A true friend believes in what you do, there to hold your hand through any weather. I found my partner, and we walked through doors together.
Diamond, your bank.
Welcome back to Arise News Now, coming to you live from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. I'm Charles Aniegolu. To Business News Now, and our Africa business analyst, Bode Oshosami, has been discussing trade relations between Africa and America after Zimbabwe's President Mugabe endorsed US President Donald Trump. He spoke with my colleague David Glencals in our London studios.
Well, first, not very much in the new US, because the US really in the past 10 years or so hasn't really done much in Africa compared to China. China is a much bigger trading partner in terms of capital flows and investments. But having said that, a more business-friendly US with normalizing rates implies that funds and capital will move back to the US. Some of that will come from places like South Africa, but what we're saying is the smaller, more business-friendly areas in Africa where reform has been consistent, like Rwanda, like Ethiopia. Surprisingly, Ethiopia is doing quite well, like Botswana. These are the spots that investors are particularly looking at. The hub economies will always get their fair share of investment, or there's going to be a tighter environment like Kenya, countries like Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. But hopefully it's expected that commodity prices will be better this year. So I think by and large, not much from the perspective of a Trump government, but from the perspective of better commodity prices, from the perspective of more consistent reform, I think Africa would do much better this year than last year.
Specifically regarding Zimbabwe and President Robert Mugabe, is he using Trump? He has backed Trump, of course, in speeches. Is he using Trump as some kind of justification for his own policy of protectionism?
Well, he's trying to, I think, but like you and I know, these terms that we use, they mean different things in different contexts. From the context of America, what they're calling protectionism is completely different. Here you have, America is a very wealthy country with very deep and intrinsic global links. In the last few years, growth may have slowed somewhat, and some say it has been as inclusive. So you have a kind of peasants' revolt, if you like, where they're trying to get a fairer deal. Most of the countries they're dealing with, they have a deficit. So they're trying to see how they can adjust and twerk the rules to some extent. That's very different from Africa, where protectionism is much more destructive. Here you have economies that are not wealthy. They don't have good institutions, talk less of intrinsic global institutions and links. They in many cases are being protectionist based on historical narratives, apartheid in South Africa, for example, colonialism in Zimbabwe, and these makes them shut themselves up, in my view. Sure. And there's a lot of distrust in a lot of the polity, and that also encourages protectionism. And the problem they've had, or let me say, why it has gone on for such a long time, is when commodity prices were higher, this protected and cushioned a lot of the misbehavior, if you like. And sure. Now that commodity prices are down, well, they're now going back up. They've had their law. But,
we're looking at Robert Mugabe and his wife.